I mean, how lucky. And I mean, my whole career's been that way. I just, I mean, we mentioned that I'd worked with Jackson Browne. I met him at the bar at the Troubadour, which was another one like Paul's Mall. It might have been the most famous of those, or the bottom line maybe in New York, of those folk clubs. But he said, "You want to play on my record?" And it was for the For Every Man album. So I mean, it's a small industry to say the least.
But so that's the exact person, however, getting back to Aretha, because I was thinking, all right, there's a couple highlights in this cat's career, and you can't do everything on the phone, and we had the Buffett thing to do, which was very important, and we did. And I was thinking, when would this, if I was you, and that all happened, that this band began to get used over and over, like, when would it occur to me that, oh man, I'm on to something good? And I thought it would be her. What is the first time that you really clicked with her? Are there any experiences when you were recollecting that, like Aretha moments that come to mind that you just treasure having that time with her?
You mean during the sessions?
During the session, or as a result of the session, just getting up close to her, maybe something you picked up from her, or just maybe a laugh you had together?
No, actually, she had such an entourage around her when she would come in. We were always booked to be at the studio. This is really hard hours. Things have changed since then, but Jerry wanted us there from 3 to 11, 3 in the afternoon to 11 for 8 hours. Well, she didn't come in until 10:30. She didn't make it the first night. So, I mean, she was on her own schedule. And so I don't remember, she had what I remember about her, besides being in complete awe of her piano playing and watching, because I was playing B3 organ and sitting right next to her. And so I could watch her doing her vocals and playing. And, we did Don't Play That Song was the big hit, and Spirit in the Dark. Those are the two hits that came off that album. And just... and I think we did about 5 tunes. They'd already done some with the Muscle Shoals guys, Roger Hawkins and David Hood and Barry, Spooner, Odom, and all those guys. But this was they had to finish the record, and they ended up doing it. Yeah, but I mean, it was very quick. But I just, what I remember about her is that just being in awe. Yeah.
Oh, those are great stories. The entourage, I can see the whole thing. Sitting there next to her, are you kidding me? That's some classic business right there. Duane Allman, he's obviously been gone a long, long time. I was barely born, and he was already off this planet. I see his name attached to you. Fill us in on what is there in that story.
Well, I tell you, he was incredible. The best at that point, the best slide player that I'd ever, I wasn't that familiar with slide at that point, and he was just, like I said, down in Criteria Studios in Miami, we worked with a lot of people that were touring, and then they'd come in for a couple of days, and I think I mentioned Taj Mahal, Jesse Ed Davis. That's how I met Jesse. They were playing. There was a place in Dania, Florida, an outdoor place where a lot of acts played, and so the Allman Brothers were down there touring Florida, and then they'd come back to work on their records. And so that's how I met Duane. They were doing their records, but Tom Dowd always used Duane, and so I got to work with him on a Ronnie Hawkins album. In fact, let's see, Ronnie was an old crony. I'm originally from Arkansas, and he's somebody his original band, not his original band, but the one that became famous was The Band, with Robbie Robertson, who I got.
Levon and everything.
Levon Helm, Richard Manuel, Garth Hudson, and Rick Danko. And I got to hear those guys when I was in the 10th grade, and Ronnie used to bring them down to Arkansas to do a week tour of Arkansas. He was telling me later at these sessions, the reason they'd come down is to buy instruments at Amro Music in Memphis, because it was, I'm not sure of the getting through customs, and back then I think it was more expensive to buy Fender equipment, and Gibson equipment up there. I'm not sure. I think it's been over 7 years. Customs won't get Ronnie at this point, but I think they bought gear. That was the reason for the trip, and because I never could figure it out why they would, they were sort of settled in up in Toronto. So,
was there anything like about him, any anecdote that you picked up? I mean, when he passed away, did you look back and say, "Man, I'm really glad I got to do this one thing with Dwayne"?
Well, yeah, to get back to Dwayne, I mean, he was just an incredible session player. That's sort of how he broke into the business. I mean, he was always in bands, but he had been asked to have that kind of discipline. I guess session players, there has to be a little bit of reservation about you can't really just completely step out. You have to be part of this unit, a rhythm section. And your main concern is the vocalist. You're backing the artist, and then you step out when there's spaces available.
Well, I think that's a great thing about when you say that about Dwayne and about his playing. I think it may be when those 2 compilation records came out after his passing, it really helped show people all those different kinds of sessions that he worked on and how he was very much a utility guy. You could throw him into a lot of places and he wouldn't sort of overplay it. He would play like exactly what was needed, and it showed off when you listen to those 2 records that I'm talking about. The ones I'm talking about, like the Best of Dwayne Allman, those anthology records. It really shows exactly what you're describing.
Right. No, and you listen to the intro, the rubato intro to "The Weight" by Aretha Franklin. It's incredible. That slide, and that's, he adjusted and adapted. He was able to do what was needed for that record, and so that's, he was just a real comfortable session player. So he, and that sort of, everybody sort of contributing at the same time. So that it was great working with him because of that, and but what I remember about him is when they were doing Layla, because we were in one studio, we were in the big studio at Criteria, and he was with Eric, and they were doing the last. I just remember walking in, and Tom was in the studio, and the control room, and they were doing that last bit on Layla. After Jim Gordon had played the piano part, and
you watched him lay it down.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. I was in there to ask Tom a question, but this is funny because what an experience this was, being at Criteria for a year. Tom was a big fan of Jackie Gleason, because Jackie lived down and we were recording somebody, and Jackie, he always worked in the big studio. When I say it's the big room, because they could put string sections in there.
Bigger
projects. We were in the Studio B, Studio A. And Jackie walks in, and we were doing somebody like Lulu, and Jackie walks in into the not the control room but the studio, and I have never seen Tom move so fast. And he comes out and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gleason." Then we were just everybody stopped playing. It was so funny. It was that happens all. That's just, if you stay in the studio long enough, that kind of stuff's going to happen.
Yeah, you have great stories, man. That's what I knew. This cat is just he's impossible. I have time for just a couple more stories. Am I right?
Sure.
Okay. It's just like he's like a story. It's like a story machine. Just go up to him and start picking stories out of him. It's pretty crazy. Where does Jimmy Cliff, I see his name, how does he intersect into your life? He's coming here next month.
No kidding. Well, that's funny you say Jimmy Cliff, because I was just with Chris Blackwell, and Chris was the producer of that record, and we were talking about that. He had just started at that time. This was 1970, and Chris was a big fan of Jerry's, of Atlantic, and somehow they were, like I said, we would get people en route from one, we would do like maybe 4 or 5 sides on somebody, and that's what it was with Jimmy Cliff, and Chris. Jerry got Chris to bring him there, and it was, I think Chris said they had a hit single off that session, but I'm not sure. When you do that many sessions, you're working every week with new artists. Sometimes you forget the songs you can listen back and you say, that sure sounds like something I played. But, you know, you really do forget.
What year was the?
That was 1970. So, yeah, that we did that thing with Jimmy Cliff.
1970. I mean, where? So, like, this is like before The Harder They Come.
Yeah. This is in between. I think he'd already had, you know, I'm not, as far as the chronology of his hits, I'm not familiar with them. But, yeah, he was sort of in, yeah, we did him. It was all in, this 1970 was filled with a lot of different people.